Although he never became a grandmaster, Rashid Nezhmetdinov was one of the most feared players in chess history. This game against Oleg Chirnikov from the 1962 USSR Team Championships shows why. Chirnikov, with the black pieces, attacks Nezhmetdinov's queen in what appears to be an invitation to a draw. Eyewitness Vladimir Voloshin explains. A draw by repetition will occur if white moves his queen from h6 to h4, while black attacks by bishop g7 and bishop f6. However, the Tatar master was not in a peaceful mood. 20, 30, 40 minutes went by, and while Rashid was thinking, Chirnikov was walking around, waiting for Nezhmetdinov to offer a draw. At that moment, an excited boy ran up to Chirnikov. "Mister, he sacrificed his queen to you." I did not see Chirnikov walk around anymore after that. Vladimir Voloshin. Nezhmetdinov kept up an irresistible initiative on the king's side, on his way to what would become one of many, many works of chess art. Rashid Gibratovich Nezhmetdinov was born in 1912 in Aktyobinsk, a tiny town on the steppes of Kazakhstan. His parents were impoverished Tatar farmhands. They died, literally worked to death, when Rashid was still a small child. The orphaned boy was sent to live with his uncle Gumer in a village outside of Nizhny Novgorod, on the banks of the fabled Volga River. Conditions here were no better, however, due to the aftermath of the Russian Civil War, which had devastated the region from 1918 to 1923. Even worse, the Bolshevik policy of Prodrazvyotska, the commandeering, or theft, of the peasants' grain to feed the Revolutionary Army, had helped cause one of the worst famines in history. The Volga famine killed more than 2 million children, but Nezhmetdinov's life was saved by his older brother, the Tatar poet Kavi Nadzhmia. Kavi arranged for Rashid to be placed in an orphanage in the ancient Tatar capital of Kazan. Tatar elements of the Mongol horde had swept through the city in the 13th century. But, unlike most of the Mongols, they settled permanently, mixing with the local Volga Bulgars to create the ethnicity and culture we now refer to as Russian Tatar. Kazan must have seemed like a paradise to young Rashid. The only happy memory he ever reported before coming to Kazan was one incident when he got to eat some fish soup on the banks of the Volga. In his time at the orphanage, however, Nezhmetdinov was well fed for the first time in his life. He also received instruction in the Muslim religion and an education in the Tatar language. Rashid would remain a practicing Muslim throughout his life, and he also developed a keen interest in learning, particularly literature, history, and mathematics. After 3 years in the orphanage, Kavi Nadzhmia was able to bring Rashid into his own household. Nezhmetdinov became very active in the Kazan Palace of Pioneers. The Soviet Young Pioneers were sort of like the Boy Scouts, but with the added bonus of communist indoctrination. The Pioneers' palaces became bustling social hubs in which many adult guides, or uncles, visited the club, often engaging in endless chess sessions. One day, 11-year-old Rashid found a scrap of paper on the stairwell. It was a chess column from a magazine. He kept it in his pocket, unable to stop thinking about it. It even began intruding on his dreams. A few days later, Rashid was watching adults play chess at the Pioneer Club. I rejoiced when I discovered they moved the things exactly as was explained on my piece of paper. Rashid sat down to play his first chess and won every game. A man named Samsonov was so impressed, he wrote a letter recommending that Rashid be admitted to the Kazan Chess Club. Against the real experts, however, Nezhmetdinov enjoyed little success. There, he said, they all won from me right up to 1927. With no notion of theory, and on top of that, too interested in blitz chess, I was slow to make progress. In 1927, however, Nezhmetdinov, age 15, won the City Pioneer Championship with a score of 100%. Just 3 years later, Rashid became a first-category player by winning the Kazan City Championship. He had also surpassed Samsonov, as this game from 1929 amply illustrates. Rashid takes the black pieces and surprises his former chess mentor with a stunning smothered mate. In 1930, Nezhmetdinov graduated high school. He briefly attended the Kazan Institute of Technology and took courses in weights and measures with the idea of obtaining employment in the Standards Bureau. Lack of funds, however, forced Rashid to drop out. His brother, Nezhmetdinov, was a poorly paid newspaper editor and couldn't afford Rashid's upkeep any longer. And so it was that Nezhmetdinov joined the Communist Party and set off for Odessa, Ukraine, to make his own way in the world. Neither Rashid nor his brother had ever blamed the Bolsheviks for the famine that had almost killed him. In fact, just 1 year earlier, Nezhmetdinov had published Coastal Fires, a prize-winning short story glorifying the Bolshevik role in the Russian Civil War. As for Rashid, he had enjoyed nothing but positive experiences as a member of the Soviet Palace of Pioneers. As it turned out, his Communist Party membership would put him in good stead in Odessa. In 1931, Odessa was a famed holiday resort on the Black Sea, but Rashid wouldn't get much beach time. He toiled all day long as a stoker in a steel mill. After work, however, Nezhmetdinov spent all his free time at the Odessa Chess Club. The club met daily in Vorontsov's palace, which had been seized by the Bolsheviks in 1917, and currently served as seat of the Odessa Soviet. As a chess-obsessed party member, Rashid fit right in. For 3 years, he knocked heads with Odessa's best first-category players. In 1931, Odessa had no chess masters, but it would soon produce an international grandmaster, later destined to meet Rashid over the board. That wouldn't happen for some time, however. In 1931, Yefim Geller was only 6 years old. In 1933, Nezhmetdinov, now the Odessa chess and checkers champion, returned to Kazan, where he took steady employment at the Standards Bureau. He also entered the Kazan Pedagogical Institute, where he studied and taught mathematics and led an informal chess circle. Nezhmetdinov would soon get the master title in checkers, which didn't help his chess career very much. At this time, checkers was taken very seriously in the Soviet Union. It was even reported in chess magazines. However, Rashid soon received a rude awakening in the All-Union tournament in Rostov-on-Don. In 1934-35, I was mainly occupied by the study of checkers. Only in 1936 did I cross swords with stronger first-category chess players, Ufimtsev and Dubinin. They gave me a good thrashing. Rashid understood now it was necessary to undertake a serious study of chess. But he then fell ill and was hospitalized for many months. However, in his typically optimistic fashion, Nezhmetdinov recognized this as an opportunity. I took along a book of Kubel's endgame studies and solved them, without a board, in my spare time. Rashid's homework paid off. In 1939, he scored 9 on 10 in a Category 1 tournament and earned the Candidate Master title. After graduating university in 1940, Rashid was called to military service. He was promptly shipped off 5,000 kilometers east to the Baikal military district on the border of Outer Mongolia. It seemed that Rashid had been banished to the ends of the earth. This didn't stop him, however, from winning the Lake Baikal District Chess Championship in February 1941. Nezhmetdinov triumphed over some stiff opposition, including Viktor Batorinsky and Konstantin Klaman. Here, Nezhmetdinov watches intently as his main rival Batorinsky takes on Klaman. Although World War II proved disastrous for Nezhmetdinov's chess development, causing a 5.5-year period during which he played no tournaments, in truth, he was extraordinarily lucky. He always seemed to leave just before, or arrive just after, some apocalyptic battle. He arrived in Baikal after the Russians had fought a murderous battle against the mighty Japanese Kwangtung army. He was then sent to Berlin just after the Soviets had already taken and secured the city. By sheer chance, Rashid had avoided every single combat zone in a war that killed almost 11 million Russian soldiers. In Berlin, finally, Nezhmetdinov was able to resume his long-interrupted chess career. In 1946, he won the championship of the Berlin Military District, finishing 14 on 15 ahead of future master and Ukrainian champion Isak Lipnitsky. In 1946, Nezhmetdinov returned to civilian life, now 34 years old. His chess comeback, perhaps understandably, got off to a rocky start. However, he played himself into shape and became captain of the DSO Spartak chess team. In 1947, he showed continued improvement at the All-Union Candidate Master Tournament in Yaroslavl. He finished shared second with Tarasov, behind Holmov. This proved to be the start of a tumultuous friendship between Nezhmetdinov, Tarasov, and Holmov, which almost ended in disaster. In 1947, however, all was well with the world. At Yaroslavl, Rashid had filled his second master norm and was now entitled to an examination match for the title of Soviet Master of Chess. Georgy Lizitsyn was appointed to be Rashid's examiner. However, After studying Lizitsyn's games for months, Rashid was stunned to receive a telegram just days before the match. The Soviet Chess Federation informed him that the master Vladas Mikenas would now be his examiner. At the 11th hour, Nezhmetdinov furiously prepared by analyzing a recent article Mikenas had written on his favorite weapon, Alyekhin's defense. Mikenas promised to be a formidable opponent. In the great tournament at Kemeri 1937, he had defeated Alexander Alyekhin with the black pieces. Even worse, the game had been photographed. Alyekhin did not speak to Mikenas for years after. However, Nezhmetdinov had prepared well for Mikenas' favorite night hunt variation of Alyekhin's defense. In Game 1 of the match, Rashid shocked his opponent by playing into the hunt variation and crushing him in 17 moves. Mikenas fought back, however, and by Game 11 he felt confident enough to face the night hunt variation again. Nezhmetdinov destroyed him, demonstrating that it should perhaps be renamed the king hunt variation. After Game 11, Mikenas did not try Alyekhin's defense again. In the end, the match was a tie, but since the examiner got draw odds, Rashid did not receive the master title. Still, he was encouraged by the result. It did not bring me the master title, but analysis of the games instilled in me confidence that the title was not far off. Despite this optimism, the next 2 years proved frustrating for Nezhmetdinov. Characteristically, he was brutally frank about his own performance. I suffered a fiasco in my games against masters. In 1950, however, Rashid earned the right to play in the Russian Federation's championship in Nizhny Novgorod. These championships were contested among members of the Russian Federations only, and were thus less strong than the USSR championships, the holy grail in Soviet chess. However, this year's field was particularly strong, featuring Grandmaster Isaac Boleslavsky. Nezhmetdinov drew his game with Boleslavsky, the heavy favorite, and went on to become the 10th Russian Federation champion. Finally, Rashid had achieved his cherished goal. He had become a Soviet master of sport in chess.